Deep breath. Are you okay? Or are you, like me, shaken by all the things that have been going on lately? Anyway, everyone else has been taking the mickey out of her, so I thought I would as well. How are we all tonight? Hi, Barb. Oh gosh, you got here early. It's 8:56 a.m. in Berkeley, California. My God, 56 Fahrenheit, 13 degrees centigrade. That's quite cold, isn't it? Hi, Silver Moon Warrior. Hi, Rachel. Now, do you know what? Every time I'm just about to go on live in the evening, there's always a crisis, isn't there? You remember the time when the bottle of oil got knocked over? And every time I'm just about to go on live, I'm all prepared, I'm all tranquil. I'm trying to sort of do a bit of zen, like getting ready for going live. And then all hell breaks loose. So today's catastrophe. Hi, Chumba. 6 o'clock in sunny Scotland. Yeah, we've been sunny today. Hi, Jennifer. So, so about 15 minutes ago, just as I'm preparing, oh, you've got a thunderstorm in Hampshire, Rachel. Oh, God, I do love thunderstorms. I've got to say, I do love a thunderstorm. I mean, not every day, but, every now and again, thunderstorms, they're quite exciting, aren't they? Anyway, so literally 15 minutes before I'm due to go live, my son, live with my son, and he's cleaned his room today, which is not an everyday occurrence, bless him, being a young lad, but it happens more often now than it ever used to, so I'm grateful for all of it. And he has a German Shepherd, Tia, also known as Big Rocky. I have my little dogs, Rocky and Riley, but they don't get on. More his dog is a German Shepherd, and she's a beautiful dog. She's not an aggressive dog normally, but she doesn't like sharing her home. She's, he lived somewhere else before and he's come back to live it, so she doesn't like sharing her space. When we're all out, if we're out having a walk, she's fine. She plays with them and everything, but actually in the house, she just doesn't like it. So we always keep them separately. So when I'm doing a live stream, hi, David, she is upstairs with my son in his room. So 15 minutes before I'm due to start the live stream, he pops downstairs to get something. We had this crash from upstairs. She's knocked over his last, if you've got dogs, you know what it's like. We've got no mugs left. Barbara, do you over there in California, do you use the word mug? A mug is like a big cup, like for your coffee or your tea or whatever. A mug is a bigger one, so... Anyway, so we've got none left now because she knocked it over. It went all over his room that he just cleaned, a coffee. And, and then when he came downstairs to sort of bring the stuff down and what have you, as he was cleaning it up, she escaped out the room and come running downstairs where my dogs were. So it's all going on. I'm trying to get my dogs out of the way because we don't want them to have a fight. One of my little dogs, all he's worried about is getting the treat because he'd just been given a treat, and I'm trying to get him out of the way in the bathroom. He's just like trying to get this treat, before he goes, even though he's in peril of his life because, so it was just bedlam for about 5 minutes, just all chaos. Anyway, everything's nice now. Hi, Ruth. So there you go. That's the story of the chaos before the stream today. There's always something going on. Oh, and then like loads of people have sent me a message. Nobody sent me a message all day. And then suddenly everybody wants to send me a message and I can't answer them because I'm on live, but never mind. Right, where are we? So, yes, so we're going to look at Peter Sutcliffe tonight. We're going to look at the story of the Yorkshire Ripper. Do you know this story, Barbie, because you're in a different country? Jackie, thunderstorms in the central UK. Ooh. And Joe H, yeah, notorious one from your neck of the woods and mine as well. And you'll see when I start talking about it, this was so close to home for me that, in fact, looking over it again today, it just gave me the chills, because this guy has been 200 yards from where I was living twice, literally just round the corner from where I was living. He has been there. He's probably driven. That could have been me, you know. It just, anyway, yeah, it's very chilling, that, isn't it? It's chilling anyway when you're learning about serial killers or any killers, but when it's right there where you know, and it literally could have been you could have been one of the victims. So Bob, you've heard of Sutcliffe but not much. Hi Jill. Yeah, well, it's obviously a massive case in the UK. It was I'm sure, Bob, you've heard of Jack the Ripper, and that's why he was given the name the Yorkshire Ripper, because the injuries that he inflicted on his victims, I'm not going to go into details. I never go into details of those gory things, but I mean, it was just like horrible. So, you know, very, very disturbed individual, a very disturbed individual. And Chumba, yeah, well, you're in Scotland, don't you? So you'll remember it on TV and in the newspaper. But if you would have been, oh, so you live near Leeds, and I'm in Manchester because he killed 2 women in Manchester. But anyway, I'm going to talk about that. But if you lived in the north, sort of around Manchester, Leeds, etc., yeah, Yorkshire is in the north. Yeah. Yorkshire is the next county on from, or, you know, you could think of it as the next state on from Lancashire. So you've got Lancashire, Yorkshire. Vanessa, hi. Oh, hello, are you there? Anyway, look, I'm getting distracted again. I'm reading the chat, and it's nice reading the chat, but I shouldn't do it really, because if I'm reading the chat too much, then I forget what I'm doing. So I want to do my housekeeping, because I always forget about that, or I often do, or sometimes I'm doing a video, it doesn't seem appropriate to do it, but I'm going to do it for this one, because this is I mean, it's a terrible case with terrible victims, but it's more in the past. It doesn't feel so disrespectful to sort of, you know, talk about the nuts and bolts of my life. But anyway, so I just want to tell you the usual things. My other job, this is the time to chat between yourselves if you know all this already, but I'm getting new subscribers all the time, so some people might not know. But I do also teach Spanish, and if you want to learn Spanish, my books are available on Amazon. Break the Language Barrier, levels 1 to 5 to learn Spanish. Vicki Riley, Vicki with an I. I also do Zoom classes. And if you want to know a little bit more about me, my life, why I'm interested in true crime, why I ended up living in Spain and being a Spanish teacher, you can read about it in Confessions of a Spanish Teacher. It's funny on this, that when I go, there's different ways that you can do these live streams. And when I come on this particular one, which is directly to YouTube, it always turns things up the wrong way. But anyway, Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, Vicki Riley with an I, that's on Amazon. If you're interested in supporting my channel, the best thing you can do for me, don't forget to hit the like button. Oh, thank you, Bob. Bob's just said it. Yeah, hit the like button. Because, yes, you're right, David. They called him the Ripper, but his weapon of choice was a hammer. But he did use knives as well. He used a lot of knives, and he did a lot of similar, you know, he eviscerated a lot of his victims, I'm afraid. But anyway, we won't go into those details. But thank you. Yeah, if you like, please, if you're watching this video and you don't mind, pressing the like is the best way you can help. The easiest way, if you like, and it's free, just to like my videos. To subscribe, of course, I expect a lot of you are subscribed. But if you're watching this and you're not subscribed and you're enjoying the content, you can always unsubscribe later on. So it's not like a lifetime commitment. If you're not really quite sure if you're going to like it or not, you can subscribe and then later unsubscribe, or wait and subscribe when you feel like you are going to enjoy the content. So those are the 3 ways you can help to support my channel. Of course, you can also buy me a coffee at coffee.com. Ko-fi.com. It's Kofi. That's somewhere in there. You can send a super sticker, which are thanks, or a super chat, super sticker, or super thanks, which I don't really understand very well. And I just want to thank everyone who sent me one of those, because you know what? It's not only the money, and it's not about the money, because, you know, some people send anything. I think it's from 99 cents. I think you can choose what you send. I don't really understand how it works, but it's so nice when I get one of those, not only for the financial side of it, but I know that someone's really appreciated the content. So then I know I'm doing the right thing, because, you know, you always get some people who say, oh, you know, somebody just put a comment on earlier. I thanked him for it and said, thank you for watching, or this is crap, or something on one of my other videos. And I just think, why put a comment like that? You know, maybe you do think it's crap. Maybe it is crap, you know, but what pointless comment to make. You know, I never say that on someone's, you know, I quite often watch YouTube videos that I think are crap, but I don't go on and say, oh, this is crap. I just think, oh, you know, go on to the next video, you know, get a life. This is a YouTube video, for God's sake. If you don't like it, don't watch it. God, if that's the only problem you've got, that the YouTube video that you're watching voluntarily, nobody's making you watching it. If your only problem in your life is that the YouTube video you're watching is crap, then, you know, you're quite lucky, actually. So you can either do that, send one of those super things. Oh, that's right. And that's what I meant to say. What it means to me as well, apart from the financial side of it, it just makes me know that you are enjoying the videos, and because that makes me want to do them. You know, because sometimes you do sort of, it's not that I don't want to do them, but I think, oh, you know, am I actually achieving anything? Am I getting anywhere? Like, especially with cases and things, and you know, and you think, is this, why am I doing this? You know, you question yourself. And then when someone enjoys it and they show you that they enjoy it, even with the thumbs up, it's not only about the super chats and things. It's just that, or the nice comments, or just think, oh yeah, no, you know, and it gives you that thing where you want to do more, you know. And the last way you can support my channel is to become a member, where you get some extra sort of content, etc., extra information. If you're a member, you'll know where I'm going on location tomorrow. But anyway, I will be releasing tomorrow where I'm going. Tomorrow, I am going to the scene of a famous crime. It's the first time I've ever been on location. I'm hoping it won't be the last if it goes well. I'm not really sure, you know, what I can do there. You know, my intention is to just get my own impression of the situation, maybe talk to some locals, because, you know, I like chatting. And to me, I like chatting to the locals, because it doesn't matter what's actually happened in a case. The locals, they're the ones who know, you know, what's actually happened. Don't feel pressured to make shows every day just when you want to. Yeah, thank you, Bob, for saying that. But I don't feel pressured to do it. I normally make a video when something, you know, I see something that, because if I see something that makes me think, I find making a video or coming on and talk. Oh, thanks, Jackie. Oh, thank you, Shelley. Oh, sorry, right. I've got to stop reading the chat because I'll get distracted. Yeah, I feel like the locals always have the key, don't they? Because whatever's going on in the city, you know, we only get, like, in anything. It's not only in true crime or whatever. But when you actually talk to people that are involved, they always know something more, don't they? They always know a little bit more that's not been on the mainstream media, has not been presented to us, you know, and I find that intriguing. And to actually see the place yourself, because you see it on the TV, you know, when a crime occurs or whatever, you see what the mainstream media want you to show about that scene. But I want, you know, it's exciting to think of going and seeing it for yourself, and questions that you thought you can answer. So, oh, Rachel, thank you. You enjoy it. I like your channel. I presume you are Rachel, aren't you? That with the channel, yeah. I haven't said yet, Claire, but I will be saying in the morning. And Silver Moon Warrior, thank you for enjoying all my. I don't expect people to enjoy all my videos. I know that there'll be sometimes people will agree with me, sometimes people won't agree with me. That's the nature of the way we are. But what I would hope is, even if someone doesn't agree with me, then they will either say to me why they don't agree with me in a nice, respectful manner, not just say, oh, this is crap. Though actually it was quite funny, because I just thought, oh, okay, thank you. I just thought I would, so I know that people can't agree with me in everything I do, and that's fine. That, to me, as I've said before, this is like having a chat with my friends. We don't always agree on everything. But when we don't agree, we don't fall out over it. We just chat about it. We say, oh, well, I think this and I think that. And if sometimes you end up coming to a sort of a common agreement, and sometimes you don't, but you don't fall out. That's the way I look at it. So, oh, thank you, Silver Moon Warrior. Well, I think I am an honest person. Sometimes that gets me into trouble. I'm sure you know that if you're an honest person. Sometimes proper mank, yeah. Well, do you know, I did notice that. So I do notice that sometimes. I know sometimes I have no filter. So it's like sometimes I'm a bit like, in the Faulty Towers episode where they say, oh, don't mention the war or whatever. That's a bit like me, because when I know that I'm not supposed to say something, I'm that busy thinking, don't mention this, don't mention that. I end up mentioning it. It just comes out, but anything I say, it is from the heart. I do talk from the heart, and unfortunately, sometimes I'm a little bit blunt. I know, and I've realised over the years it's my dad's fault. I'm blaming it on my dad, because he was very blunt. He was one of those people, like typical sort of northern guy, where he would say, like, you go down, you'd be all dressed up, ready to go out, and you go downstairs, and he'd say, "You're not going out like that, are you?" And you just sort of go, "Oh, no." I like go back upstairs, get changed. Whereas my mom, bless her, and she was lovely, but she would always say, "You look nice, however you looked." Whereas my dad was so brutally honest. It was like, you go, "Oh, what have you done to your face?" Like when you're a teenager and you get spots, and you go, "Oh, what's happened to your face?" And you go, "Oh my God." So, but in the end, it became a bit of a legend in our family. He got away with it because everybody knew that he would just tell you what he thought. And I think that's where I get it from. So sometimes I can't quite keep it in. I do try. I'm not cruel. Don't get me wrong. I'm not cruel. But if you want an honest answer, my friends have actually said that to me. You'll give me an honest answer. What do you think about this? Because sometimes, I would rather that. Yeah, agree to disagree, Shelley. If I said to someone, I would rather someone told me what they really think. I mean, I've said before, I sometimes would prefer a difficult person any day than a false person, because being an empath, and you'll know, Silver Moon, if you're an empath and someone's saying something to you and you don't feel that that's genuine, what they're saying, because they're saying it, the words are right, but the feeling that's coming off is not right. That's a very confusing feeling to an empath. It's exhausting being around those sort of people, because you're constantly confused with the messages. You're getting one message with the words, and you're getting another message with your sort of instincts. So, oh, hello, Karasi Gibbon. I didn't think I'd see you again, but you appeared in my feed. Well, have you not subscribed? I mean, I'm not telling you to subscribe, but if you subscribe, I should appear in your feed. So, I don't know. Crazy Gibbon. It comes up as Karazi Gibbon. Must be just, right. Karate Gibbon. Right, okay. Exactly. A truth can't hurt you, really. I mean, it makes you think, and sometimes the truth hurts in a different sort of way, but it depends. I know that some people, I have to be careful sort of who I say what to, because some people, you just know that they're not going to appreciate the truth. Oh, you know, you lot might know, like years ago, I remember, have you ever seen your friend's partner with another woman? That's 3 times that's happened to me. When I lived in Manchester, funnily enough, I saw my friend's boyfriend, or what she thought was her boyfriend. I was coming home from Manchester town centre one day. I'd been shopping on a Saturday. I was sat upstairs on the bus, and up to the top of the stairs comes my friend's boyfriend with another girl. And it was obviously we're in a relationship. It's got all shopping bags and they're all sat there all cuddling and what have you. And this is my friend's boyfriend. And I hummed and hawed, should I tell her, should I not tell her? Anyway, in the end, I did tell her. And do you know what? She said to me, I wish you'd never told me. That's happened to me 3 times with friends that but I can't, you know, I don't know what I'd do now if that happened. But do you see those sort of things? Some people don't want the truth. I would want the truth. My God, if you saw my partner with another woman, I'd want to know. I'd be really annoyed if my friend didn't tell me. But anyway, some people don't like the truth. Unfortunately, I had another friend who we tried to tell her about her boyfriend, and then she ended up, after it all went wrong and they ended up splitting up. She said to me, "Oh, if I do that again, you will tell me, won't you?" And I said, "Well, I told you then, but you didn't listen. You know, she'd get angry with me." And it did happen again with her. But anyway, never mind. Yeah. That's right, Silver Moon Warrior. In the end, it's quite exhausting to be around people. But, you know, I'm trying my best. I do love people. I really do love people. But I think what you've got to learn to do, what I've learned to do, I think now, is you be around people and I enjoy people. But when you know you're ready to step back and you need a break, you've got to listen to yourself. You've not to be a people pleaser. That's the problem. So when you're a people pleaser, you're just doing what you think other people want you to do. That is not good for you. But if you can be around people, but then when you just get to a point where you think, right, now, a bit of me time now, you know, spend a couple of days at home with the dogs or whatever, or I don't know, just away from people, then you're ready to see people again. So I think when I was younger, and I think we're all the same when we were younger, you're always trying to please people all the time, and you do what you think they'll want you to do rather than what's right for you. So I think that's what's changed, you know, with me, is now I listen to what I need more. And if it comes to a point where I don't want to do something, I do know how to say no now. You know, there's years that I would never say no because I didn't want to hurt the other person's feelings. But, you know, you've got to look after yourself first, and then you can look after other people, can't you? Okay, so I can see you all chatting there. I like to see you all chatting in chat. All right. Yeah, do you know that sounds crazy given? That sounds like paranoia then. So he's paranoid, is he? You know, some people are paranoid and some people are very toxic and nasty about other people, and do you know, but it's difficult, but you have to step back sometimes. Okay, so let's get on to talking about Peter Sutcliffe. Now, Peter Sutcliffe, he was born in Yorkshire, which, as we were saying earlier, is in the north of England. It's the next county on, I think, from Lancashire. And for those of you that are watching from Canada or America, so a county is a bit like a state. It's not quite the same, but that's the most closest thing. You know, Britain is divided, or England is divided into different states. Lancashire, Yorkshire, I don't know. It's awful. I don't know the sort of whole list of states, but they tend to end in shire. And Lancashire is in the north and Yorkshire is in the north. And that's where he was born, in Yorkshire. They call it God's own country. I don't know if there's anyone here from Yorkshire. But, oh, is that where you're from? Don't they call it God's own country or county? God's own country or God's own county? I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, just the same as in America or Canada, would you imagine, with states, different states, although people feel British or feel English, but they also identify very strongly with the county that they live in, whether they live in the north or the south, or they live in Lancashire, if they live in Yorkshire, etc. They have that's a strong sense of identity as well, and I'm sure that's the same in most countries. David, I haven't got a clue about geography. Have you realised that? I am absolutely rubbish. The only geography I know is the geography of Spain. I know that reasonably well, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. God's Own Country was a good movie. Is that Yorkshire? Is it Yorkshire that calls itself God's Own Country? What does Yorkshire call itself? Maybe I'm getting it completely wrong. I don't know. But yeah, in most parts of Britain, don't we? We do identify quite strongly, but some counties identify more strongly than others, don't they, I suppose? Yeah, because even though Britain is a tiny country in comparison to most countries, but it's still got these strong senses of identity, even within a small country like that. There's not a lot of countries that are smaller than Britain, really. Most countries are quite a bit larger. But anyway, it's an interesting thing that even within a small area, everybody would identify so differently. Well, so he was born there in Yorkshire on the 2nd of June 1946. So he's one of that generation that we call the boomers. He was born after the war when, there was this real emphasis on repopulation because so many men especially, had died during the war, during the Second World War. He died on the 13th of November 2020, so not that long ago. He was 74 years old. He died in a prison hospital. Now, I remember reading at the time, I thought he died of COVID, but when I was sort of researching today, they said it was diabetes related issues. But, it could be that if he had diabetes and then he got COVID, that, Crazy Gibbon, we're talking about Peter Sutcliffe because it's Serial Killer Sunday, and that is the thumbnail on the video. Peter, the Yorkshire, that is what the video is about. Every Sunday I do a Serial Killer Sunday and I talk about a different serial killer, and this week is Peter Sutcliffe. May not be what you're interested in. If you're not interested in it, that's fine. Just click out and come back on maybe another video that you might be interested in. Okay, so Peter was finally convicted of murdering 13 women and attempting to murder 7 others between 1975 and 1980. So again, he was in this era, I call it the era of the serial killer, because I sometimes do wonder, will we ever have these kind of serial killers again? Because of the advances now in DNA, etc. Will they get identified so much more quickly, won't they? It's so much easier to identify a serial killer now. Whereas in those days, there wasn't so much... there was no DNA testing for a start, and then there wasn't so much, what's the word I'm looking for? For example, between Yorkshire and Lancashire, maybe the police didn't communicate. We were just getting into the digital age where things would be on computer and different police forces would communicate with each other, etc. So, sometimes I wonder, will we ever get serial killers again? Or certainly like these ones that in the 70s and going into the 80s, there were so many serial killers because it was so much more difficult then to link crimes together and to actually catch them. Whereas I do think now it is easier to catch them. You can't stop them starting off in the first place, but hopefully they get, they get stopped in their tracks. And you're right, Chumbury did become good friends with Jimmy Savile because he ended up in Broadmoor Mental Hospital. Now, when he was actually sentenced, he tried to claim that he was not guilty on the grounds of insanity or whatever, and that was rejected, and he was found guilty of 20, and he was given 20 concurrent sentences of life imprisonment. And this in 2010, which is quite a long time afterwards, this was converted to a whole life tariff. And what that means is just no chance of parole ever. There's very few prisoners in Britain have got this whole life tariff. And he was one of them, but he wasn't converted to that in 2010, which I hadn't realised. So although most of the 13 murders were in Yorkshire, he did commit 2 murders in Manchester, which is where I'm from, and all the others were in West Yorkshire. Now, he did start off with women and girls because it commonly assumed that he killed prostitutes, which he mainly did. But why did he kill prostitutes? He killed prostitutes because prostitutes are vulnerable, aren't they? They're vulnerable. They're easy prey. They're easy prey. One, they'll get you, just have to pull up and they'll get in your car and you drive off with you. And 2, they're not, and certainly at the time, I think now things have changed. Thankfully, things have changed. But certainly at that time, it was almost, regarded like, well, it was their own fault for being a prostitute. Hey, here we go. Here we go. Hey, come here, Rocky. This is only one of the little dogs, not the big dog, but he has got a loud bark. So, yeah, so thankfully now I think that attitude has changed. We don't, well, for a start, they're called sex workers now, which it sounds, at least a little bit of more respect. I mean, at the end of the day, these women, when I lived in Manchester, I knew a lot of women that were doing that. They didn't do it because they enjoyed doing it. They did it because they were trying to feed their children. They were on benefits. It was, or they may have been on drugs or whatever. They were brought up in the most, deprived areas, etc. They didn't. It's not a choice that you make because you think it's going to be great. You just fall into it. These women fall into it, and any woman in that comes from that sort of background could fall into it. And it's normally, as I say, to try and feed their children, keep their children fed, etc. Anyway, I'm just looking at the chat. Just so you're all okay in chat, aren't you? Yeah. So, yeah, and the areas, I mean, I can't speak for Yorkshire because I don't know Yorkshire, but I can speak for Manchester and the areas like Hume, Moss Side. There's some very, very deep. I mean, you can't even imagine how deprived they are. And I did live in one of them briefly. In fact, I've lived in 2. And I remember when I lived in Alexander Park, I was very young. I didn't even realise. I mean, the thing is, when you're young, you just don't really notice, do you, what's going on? But when I very first left home, I went to live with my sister, and that was in a very deprived area. Then when I left again later, it's a bit of a long story, but I went to live in another area. If any of you that are on here from Manchester, Alexander Park, which is a big red light area, but I didn't know that at the time. I just went to live there because this bedsit was really cheap. But when I think about it now, and it was really pretty, it was right next to a park and it was a beautiful area. And I noticed that there was all these, you're bearing in mind I was only about 20, 21. I noticed there were all these sort of women hanging around, and I did see people picking them up. It didn't even occur to me that they were sex workers. That's how, well, you could either call it stupid or naive. I don't know which is the right way. But I honestly really didn't realise what was going on for such a long time until I actually mentioned it to someone. They said, well, yes, it's a you live in a red light area. Oh, my God, it was terrifying. Because you'd be, waiting for a bus and you'd be being curb crawled and, and really sort of, because obviously now I think people realize you can't just attack the actual sex workers themselves. You know, the guys who are crawling around doing these things, they you know, they've got their responsibility as well. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is these areas that he preyed upon, it was easy to find prey, if you like. It was easy to pick up a woman. So he started off with women and girls in residential areas, but he shifted to red light areas because it was just easier. It was just easier and he had less chance of being caught. Anyway, and he was fine. So he got away with it for 5 years, even though he was under the police radar. And I'm going to explain later why he got away with it for 5 years. He was finally arrested for driving with false number plates. So this quite often happens, I think, or used to happen with serial killers. When they finally get apprehended, it's for something ridiculous, you know, like a driving offence or whatever. They get stopped, and if, as in this case, the police that stopped him, if they're switched on, you know, there'd probably be a load of times he could have been stopped and they wouldn't have made a fuss of it, or, you know, it wouldn't have come to anything. But luckily that particular night he was in a car with a 24-year-old prostitute, because she had a lucky escape, and he had false number plates on. So the police stopped him and took him to the police station. When they searched him at the police station, he had on, he had like normal trousers on, but underneath his normal trousers, he had a V-necked sweater upside down. So his legs were in the arms of the sweater, and then there was a V, and it was for easy access to his private parts. And obviously that registered to them as strange. And so they took him into custody, and they went back to where they had arrested him. And they found, let me just see, I wrote it down what they found. I think that's where they found his hammer. Gosh, I've got that many notes on this one. I mean, this goes on forever. So yeah, they returned the next day and they found a knife, a hammer and rope that he discarded. As the police, he said, he needed to go to relieve himself, and he'd thrown away these weapons. They found a second knife in the police station, in the toilet in the police station. They said that he needed to go to the toilet, and that he'd hidden a knife actually in the toilet in the police station. So yeah, what a lucky girl that was, and how well those police did to realise, because you know what, they must stop millions. You can't stop this. You know, they call prostitution the oldest profession in the book, isn't it? And it is. It's always gone on. It always will gone on. I personally think you should legalise it, and then at least the women will be looked after. You're never going to stop it happening. It's always going to happen. It's just one of those things. You can't pretend that it's not going to happen. It happens. But all you can do is protect the women, or boys, because it's not only women, it's men as well. And I was thinking that one of the next, maybe even next Sunday, the serial killer Sunday that I'll do next week, is Stephen Port. He was a guy who murdered young male escorts, etc. You know, so it's men or women. They're not protected because it's illegal. You know, it's all underhand, it's all underground. If it was legal, it's actually legal in Spain, in some places anyway. I won't go into that because I could get into that and talk about that for a long time. But yeah, it's important to know that the women or boys or men that are doing this, it's just always going to happen. You can't, some things you just can't pretend that it doesn't happen. You've just got to acknowledge it and do something, you know, and that makes it safer for the people themselves. So anyway, that's how he finally got caught. So once he got caught, he was one of these confession killers. In other words, once he was actually caught, he did start to talk about his crimes and admit his crimes, etc. Sorry, just have. Yeah, he could have just gone commando, Claire. I know, I don't know why he didn't, but anyway. Right, so let's go back. Gosh, there's so much I want to tell you about Peter Sutcliffe. Now, when he was in Broadmoor, that's where he met Jimmy Savile, because, you know, Jimmy Savile was given the keys of Broadmoor, you know, because he was so trusted, so respected. He was actually, he could enter Broadmoor, which is like the mental health hospital, where that's where Ian Huntley is at the moment, isn't it? All the worst criminals, if you like, but with mental health issues, they're put in Broadmoor, and Jimmy Savile could walk freely around there. How did that ever happen? I mean, he's not even a doctor or a psychologist or anything. He was just allowed to do it. But yes, Barb, in Amsterdam, it's legal. That's right, it is legal, and it's, you know, I do think it's a good thing. But anyway, we'll talk. Maybe we should do a discussion on that one day. I'm sure everyone's got different views, but do you know what? By pretending that something's not going on, it doesn't stop it happening. It's still happening. And in fact, if you want your daughter, your mum, your granddaughter, your sister to be safe, it's probably better that it is legalized, you know, that rather than the, you know, the people just been left in the streets to sort of get into cars with people that they don't even know who they are. Anyway, he was convicted of murdering 13 women and attempting to murder 7 others between 1975 and 80. And yeah, eventually given this whole life tariff. Okay, so he switched to the red light areas because it's just easier to pick up women. Finally arrested for the number plates. And the shocking thing is, he was during the 5-year investigation into the Yorkshire Ripper, he was interviewed 9 times. 9 times that man was interviewed, and nothing happened. I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? Anyway, became a confession killer. He started confessing to all the crimes. He said the voice of God made him do it. But the jury didn't accept that. The jury and the judge didn't accept that. He was convicted of murder. After he went into prison, he started using his mother's maiden name. Her maiden name was Coonan. He adored his mum. This is what I never understand as well. So he had all this love and respect for his mum, but he took so many other people's mothers away from them. You know, they may have been sex workers, but a lot of them, they were doing that for their children. So I don't understand how they divorce in their heads this, like, oh, my mum, I love, but that mum means nothing, you know, even though there's children there waiting for that mum to come home. I just don't understand how they sort of separate that. Anyway, he was linked to many other attacks as well. When he was born in Bingley in West Riding, those of you that are on here from Yorkshire, you would know where that is. He was a Catholic. He was an altar boy. Apparently there were no issues, as it was, you know, quite often with serial killers, they look back and they see issues in their childhood, like they were hurting animals or, you know, doing weird things or whatever. There was no issues that have been reported anyway. And for once, they didn't blame his mother. His father was an abusive alcoholic. So, because normally, I think they always say it's something to do with the mother, don't they? There's always something the mother did. The mother was domineering, or the mother didn't care about him enough, or whatever. But in this case, they don't say that. They say his father was an abusive alcoholic, and they did have to live through a lot of abuse in that household. As he grew older, he developed a growing obsession with voyeurism, you know, and he was fascinated with prostitutes. He would watch them being picked up. He would try and spy on them as they were actually sort of doing the deed, etc. Yes, David, he did. He got attacked by someone in Broadmoor, didn't he? And he got his face slashed. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Yes, an altar boy. A dogger. Jennifer saying he was a dogger. Sorry, I can't. Anyway, as he got older, he had various jobs. And one of there's a big thing made about him being a grave digger for a brief time. But I don't know. That was just a job that he had. I don't know if you can really, just digging grave. Well, I don't know. To me, that doesn't see. That's just a job. Someone's got to dig graves, so why not him? But anyway, on the 14th of February 1967, this is where he met his wife, Sonia Zuma. Now, her actual name is not Sonia. Her name was Okan. Oh gosh, I wrote it down. It's a Russian or Ukrainian, Eastern European name. But she was born in England, so it must have been her parents that were Eastern European and changed her name, or she maybe changed her name because it was easier, to Sonia, because the other name is Oksana. Oksana, perhaps more difficult or identifies you as a foreigner, Anyway, they got married on the 14th of, he met her on the 14th of February 1967, and they got married shortly afterwards. Now, 2 years before she married Peter Sutcliffe, Sonia herself had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. So there's not an awful lot not known about Sonia. Many people think maybe she knew about it, but I'm going to address that later. She may have known something, but we'll never know, I suppose. She's still alive. She married again, but anyway, we'll look at that later. But she had several miscarriages, and eventually they were told that they couldn't have children. So the first time he actually murdered someone was Wilma McCann. I'm going to read out the names of the people he murdered. There were many other victims that he attacked, and it's unfortunately too numerous really to mention. But I'm going to read out the names of the poor women that he actually did kill. So the first murder was Wilma McCann in Leeds, 1975. Then there was Emily Jackson in Leeds, 1976. Irene Richardson, Leeds, 1977. Patricia Atkinson, Bradford, 1977. Jane MacDonald, Leeds, 1977. Jean Jordan, this was the first one that he killed in Manchester. And Jean Jordan's body was found literally 200 yards from my house. I live, any of you that are from Manchester, Southern Cemetery. I lived right opposite on Balmoor Road, right opposite Southern Cemetery, Princess Parkway. And poor Jean, she was found in the allotments, literally 200 yards, maybe a little bit more, maybe 300 yards from my house. It makes me go cold now to think about it, because he went back to her. I'll talk about that actual individual case later, but at least twice he was within 300 yards of my house. And I remember that was the day that my mum said to me, I was at high school at the time, and I used to walk through the park on the way to school. And my mum said to me, you can't walk through the park anymore. You've got to get the bus. Because we didn't have a car. So, and anyway, your parents didn't take you to the school then. You just had to make your own way there, didn't you? But, and I was like, well, because we used to quite like walking through the park. Sometimes I'd walk through on my own. Sometimes my friends would call for me and we'd walk through the park. But, or you could get a bus, and it was only about 15 minutes on a bus. But we quite like walking. And she said, you cannot walk through the park anymore. And that was because Jean Jordan, her body had been found literally around the corner from my house. Anyway, seventh victim was Yvonne Pearson, Bradford, 1978. Helen Ripker, Huddersfield, 1978. Vera Millward, and she was the other one that was found in Manchester. She was found in the grounds of Manchester Royal Infirmary, which is one of the big hospitals in Manchester. Again, not far, a bit further than the other one from my house, a bus ride away from my house, but that's where she was found. And he said he came to Manchester because it was all getting too difficult in Leeds, etc., and the surrounding areas, because there was so much police attention, that, you know, that's why he came to Manchester, just to get out of, he came to the red light areas in Manchester to get out of, because he thought it was getting too sort of dangerous for him to do it in Leeds anymore, because he was getting too, well, not he was getting well known, but the Yorkshire Ripper was getting well known, and he had been interviewed 9 times. So he was, you know, so anyway, just wanted to get out the area. So unfortunately, for those 2 ladies, he came to Manchester and went to the red light area, and that made me go cold as well, because I thought, oh my God. I mean, it was later on when I lived in one of those red light areas, like when I was in Alexander Park. It was later on, but you just think it wasn't an area that was. Alexander Park is not just a red light area. I mean, there's massive houses there. People with loads of money live there. You know, I didn't have loads of money. I lived in like a bedsit, which was one of those great big houses divided into different flats. It was really cheap, you know, so a lot of younger people lived there because it was just cheap to live there. And it was about £18 a week or something at the time. I mean, it's a long time ago, but anyway, after Vera's 10th victim was Josephine Whitaker in Halifax, 1972. His 11th victim was Barbara Leach in Bradford, 1979. Then we had Marguerite Walls in Leeds, 1980. And his last victim was Jacqueline Hill in Leeds in 1980. But there were 11 other women that he attacked who survived, but with a lot of trauma, obviously. So his first, so they were the women he murdered. His first documented assault, who did survive, was in 1969. And you know what? This woman, she actually got his number plate. So he picked her up, you know, as a sex worker, a prostitute. And he said, as she got out the car to get in the back of the car to do whatever they were going to be doing, he hit her with a sock filled with rocks and knocked her over. Anyway, she didn't die. And luckily for her, some other people turned up at the same time. Well, I say luckily for her, she now says she wishes she would have died. She's been so traumatized. She wishes she would have died because she's found it very difficult to live with. And he drove off because these other people arrived, but she had the forethought to get his number plate. And the next day, the police went round to his house. They went round to his house and they interviewed him. And he just said that he did hit her, but he just hit her with his hand. You know, the thing is, that was how it was in those days. She was a sex worker. She had no, you know, he's like this by now. He's married to Sonia. They've bought their own house. They're living in a nice house. Now, you know, even though he was born into a working class family, by now he's more or less a middle class family. Police have gone round there and all they said to him was, and to be fair, the lady herself didn't want to press charges because she probably didn't want to get involved with the police. But they said, you're a very lucky man, because she doesn't want to press charges. But why didn't the police press charges themselves? But anyway. In 1975, Anna Rogulski, he hit with a hammer and slashed her stomach. Oh no, she's the one that said that she was so traumatized she wished she had died later on. Anyway, so there were several more victims that he assaulted but didn't actually kill. And then Wilma McCann, she was his first victim that he ever, you know, that he actually killed. Wilma McCann was the mother of 4 very young children. And in fact, her oldest daughter, who ironically enough was called Sonia, same name as Peter Sutcliffe's wife, eventually she deleted herself because she couldn't live with knowing what had happened to her mother. So this is what I mean about these crimes. It's not, I mean, it's terrible, all the people that he killed and assaulted, but then you have to magnify it by at least 4 other ripples of family members, friends who are traumatized by what's happened to their family and they never get over it. These should be added on to these people's list of crimes. You know, these should be added on, extra sentencing. You know, if you've murdered someone and then later their family member deletes themselves because they can't cope with it, you should then get a sentence for that, I think, and extra years for that, because they wouldn't have done that probably if you wouldn't have murdered their mother in the first place. So it makes me really angry. And yeah, there is a lot of snobbery, exactly, lots of snobbery. It's, you know, they believe, anyway, well, like one of you just said there in the chat, this happens all the time. Happened with Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito. They believed Brian and didn't believe Gabby. But it happens so much. It's like you can't even. The police have off. I don't like slagging off the police because I think sometimes the police do a really good job, like that guy that did finally catch him. But why did it take 5 years and 9 different interviews to catch him? He should have been caught long before that. You know, it shouldn't have got to that point, all those people that died. But, of course, there was another reason. There was another reason why it took so long. And this is another idiot, but for different reasons. So, shortly after the investigation started and they started linking up, you know, the cases. And for those of you that were... No, they can't hear, Bob. I know they can do... no, I don't think in Britain, maybe someone in chat will tell me any different, but I do not think that the victims can call for a longer sentence. I think it's only the judge can make... I mean, they make... You're talking about like a victim impact statement. Do they do them in the UK? I don't know if they do those in the UK. But the judge decides, and the judge is tied by whatever the legislation of the time is. So there are some time, like the whole life tariffs, for example, there's a criteria. You can only give someone a whole life tariff. In other words, life with no chance of parole. You can only do that if they fit every one of the criteria. If they don't fit every one of the criteria, the judge can't override that and do it anyway. They're tied by the law. And no, I don't think they have that here. Yeah. And whatever sentence they get here, it normally gets reduced, not extended. You know, it quite often gets reduced. That's why as well I think the police do have to be very careful, because they have to make sure they've got all their ducks in a row. It's very different. It is so difficult to convict someone. I mean, you know, I don't want people to be convicted, falsely convicted. I really don't. But sometimes I think, my God, there's so many people that literally get away with murder or get away with very light sentences. How many times do you read of people that they've got? Peter Tobin, he was one. He'd been in prison for drugging those 2 girls and leaving them for dead. And then he was allowed out again to go on and murder other people. You know, anyway, so this is the other reason why Peter Sutcliffe got away with it for so long, because this idiot, John Samuel Humble, who was from Newcastle, in the UK, and for those of you who's not from the UK, in Newcastle they have a very, very distinctive accent. As soon as you heard someone speaking from that area, you would know that they were from that area. You know, they couldn't be from anywhere else. It is the most distinctive accent, probably like someone speaking from Dallas or whatever with the southern accent. You would know where they were from. And this guy, this John Samuel Humble, they called him in the end Wearside Jack. Now, he was born on the 8th of January 1956, so he was older than Peter Sutcliffe. And he actually died on the 30th of July 2019. He died before Peter Sutcliffe. he, for some unknown reason, obviously mental health issues, decided to send in an audio tape, an audio recording, and also several letters during the period from 1978 to 1979. He decided to send into the police an audio recording and these letters claiming that he was the Yorkshire Ripper. And this threw the police off completely, absolutely completely, because first of all, he had a Geordie, that we call it a Geordie accent. If someone's from Newcastle, around that area, that we call them Geordies. And as I say, a Geordie accent is very, very distinctive. And he sent in this audio recording. Now, I think I've got it up on here. I'm going to read it out to you. And it just threw the police off completely. So they stopped looking for the Yorkshire Ripper in Yorkshire because they were thinking, he must be from Newcastle. So let's see, let me read you. This was a letter that he wrote. Dear Sir, I'm sorry I cannot give my name for obvious reasons. I am the Ripper. I've been dubbed a maniac by the press, but not by you. You call me clever, and I am. You and your mates haven't got a clue. That photo in the paper gave me fits, and that bit about killing myself, no chance, I've got things to do. My purpose to rid the streets of them sluts. God, how dare he, how dare he. My one regret is that young lassie MacDonald. So that was one girl that was murdered who wasn't a sex worker. I didn't know because I changed my routine that night. I'm up to number 8 now, you say. You say 7, but remember Preston's 75. I get about, you know. You're right, I travel a lot. You probably look for me in Sunderland. Don't bother, I am not daft. I just posted a letter there on one of my trips. Well, that's right. So some of the letters that they got from were postmarked, because I can tell from where they're posted, in Sunderland, which is in that Newcastle area, in this Geordie area. Not a bad place compared with Chapeltown and Manningham. These are Yorkshire areas or Leeds areas and other places. Warn the whores to keep off the streets because I can feel it coming on again. Sorry about the young lassie. Yours respectfully, Jack the Ripper. I might write again later. I'm not sure. The last one really deserved it. The whores are getting younger each time. Old slut next time, I hope. Huddersfield never again. Too small, close call last time. Anyway, the thing is, there were things that he said in these letters that threw the police off completely because they felt like he did have inside knowledge of these killings. And then the audio tape that he sent, I wonder if I can get that up and we can listen to it, because this haunts me because it was played on all the buses. It was played everywhere. So I would get on my bus to work as a young girl, and I'd go upstairs on the bus to have a cigarette because you could only smoke on the bus then. Upstairs. You could only smoke upstairs on the bus. And this tape would be, going this Newcastle accent, reading out all these things. And this is what he said on the tape. I can't find the actual recording just now, but I'm Jack. I see you are still having no luck catching me. I have the greatest respect for you, George. That was the detective that was in charge of the case. But Lord, you are no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started. I reckon your boys are letting you down, George. They can't be much good, can they? So that was an actual audio recording, as I say, with this very strong accent from Newcastle or Sunderland. And it just threw the police off completely because they felt like it was genuine, didn't they? And yes, David, it ruined George Oldfield, the detective's career, because he was so sure that he was so sure that this was actually the Yorkshire Ripper, but of course it wasn't. It was a total hoax. And this idiot, it hindered the arrest of Peter Sutcliffe by 18 months. So when he came up as maybe being suspicious, because he didn't have a Newcastle accent, he didn't have a Geordie accent, they just discounted him. Anyway, going on from that, because in the meantime, then they did catch Peter Sutcliffe, but 25 years later, so this Wearside Jack, this John Samuel Humble that did these hoax called and probably caused the death of another 6 women or whatever. 25 years later, when DNA came in, a fragment from one of those envelopes traced his DNA. Because he must have been in trouble with the police for something, because they're only allowed to take your DNA if you're arrested. If you're arrested in the UK, they automatically take your DNA. So in 2006, he was jailed for 8 years for perverting the cause of justice. Personally, I think there should be another way of he should have been prosecuted for the deaths of those women as well, the ones that were killed in the time that he was leading the police completely, oh gosh. Anyway, he's met his maker now, so he'd be paying his price for whatever he did, just as Peter Sutcliffe is. And what he did, obviously he didn't murder the women, but in a way he did. He led to the murder of those other women, because it stopped Peter Sutcliffe being apprehended. And he may have been apprehended because he was on the police radar, but they were just completely thrown off by this Wearside Jack. Terrible, really. Hi, Lady Doglove. Hi, Pauline. Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Yes, please hit the like button if you haven't already. Thank you for that. So let's go back. I just want to go back and tell you about these 2 poor, unfortunate women that were found in Manchester. For me, that was a bit like the end of childhood, because suddenly, before that, we would have always gone off playing in fields or walking through the park, or, just wasn't anything you ever worried about. And it wasn't, don't get me wrong, I don't think it was safe then. I mean, something could have still happened to us, but nothing had ever happened local to us where we had to be scared of what was happening. And of course, that all changed, especially when Vera Millward was found right next to the Southern Cemetery, which, as I say, we actually lived opposite the Southern Cemetery. It would take 5 minutes to walk to where she was unfortunately found. So Vera was a sex worker. She was 40 years old. Oh, sorry, she was the one that was found at the MRI at the Manchester Royal Infirmary at the hospital that was a bit further away from me, a bus ride away from me. And where she was found is now, the hospital has been extended, and it's a playground now for the children, the patients in there, the child patients. It's been converted into a playground of a children's unit. Now, she was the last sex worker that he murdered. And in fact, it would be 11 months with no attacks, because at the time, his mum, again, how much he loved his mum, but he didn't seem to think anybody else's mum counted. But his mum was very ill, was gravely ill, and they think that's why there were no attacks in that 11 months. So no, the one that was found literally around the corner from me is Jean Jordan. Now, he picked her up in Moss Side. Any of you that are from Manchester, you know these areas, Moss Side, Hume, etc. That are they're not the best areas. Let's say they're not the most. I mean, I worked in Russia, in the Department of Health and Social Security, Russia. I've been out in Moss Side. I've been in the Nile Club, which was an infamous club. I've been around those areas, and they're not nice areas in a way, but the people, it's hard to explain what it's like. You're sort of, you will be you are safe most of the time. You're perhaps a bit not safe if you go in there as a stranger. But anyway, they're not nice areas, I suppose, but they're very poor areas, deprived areas. So a lot of these women came from those areas because they, you know, it was poverty that drove them into sex work. And when he was telling the story of Jean, she was actually, when he pulled up, she was actually talking to another man, and she was umming and ahhing which car to get in. And he said, Peter Sutcliffe said, she made the worst decision of her life because she got in my car. Now, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of Peter Sutcliffe on the thumbnail, but, you know, he was quite a handsome man, you know, youngish. I think he was in his 30s when he was arrested, quite good looking, really, unassuming, bit like, you know, a lot of them are, Gary Ridgway, etc. So she got in the car with him because she probably thought he looked safer. Anyway, off they went to the allotments at the side of Southern Cemetery, which, as I say, were right sort of 200 yards away from my house where I was living. And as she was getting out the car to get in the back of the car, he killed her. And then a car engine, he saw a car engine turn on and a car started. And as this car pulled off, another car pulled up. And he realised that it was too dangerous for him to stay there. So he rushed off. And as he was on his way back home to Yorkshire, he realised he'd left a £5 note, which had been included in his pay packet a couple of days before, brand new £5 note. He'd given her, that was the payment. Oh my God, that was what, anyway, £5 was whatever they were going to do. It was cost, and she asked for payment in advance. So he gave her this £5 note, knowing that he was just going to take it off her after he murdered her. And as he was on his way home, he realised that because he'd rushed, although he'd remembered to pick up his hammer or his knife or whatever he'd used, he'd forgotten this £5 note. So he had to decide whether to carry on and go home or to go back for the £5 note. And he decided it was too dangerous to go back for the £5 note. So he went home, and he was constantly scrolling the news, waiting for this body to be found. Anyway, she wasn't found, and he realised that he must have covered her over too well. He wanted her to be, he was, a lot of killers do, they want these bodies to be found. Some do, some don't. Some quite like, he probably quite enjoyed watching it on the news, got a buzz out of it. Some don't, they bury them so well and they don't want them to be killed, but he did. Anyway, so what he did, when they moved into their new house, him and Sonia, they had a housewarming party. He dropped his parents off at home after the party, he took his parents home, and then he went off back to Manchester. Manchester's only an hour away from Leeds. It takes about an hour up the motorway to get from Leeds to Manchester, or certainly to South Manchester. And he went back to look for the £5 note. He couldn't find it. He searched a handbag, he searched everything. He couldn't find the £5 note. So he took his anger out on this poor woman's body. And she was already dead, but he then, desecrated her body even more with his anger. And I won't go into the gory details because they really are gory details. Didn't find the £5 note, and then he went home again. 10:30. Oh, and he left her further out so that she was more easily seen, so that she would be discovered. 10:30 that next morning, the guys that look after the allotments arrived to start work. Because an allotment, for those of you, I don't know if you're in different countries, you might not know what an allotment is, but these are pieces of ground that the council allocates people who don't have a garden, so that they can grow vegetables or flowers or whatever. You have to apply to the council, and you get awarded a patch of ground, and you can. And in near Southern Cemetery, there's a huge patch of allotments, and everybody will own a little patch of it. So these two guys arrived to, for their allotment. And not many people know this, but one of the guys that arrived was an actor. Well, he wasn't an actor then, but he became a very famous actor in the UK because he was in Coronation Street. Bruce Jones, who played Les Battersby in Coronation Street, he actually, him and his, the other guy he was with, what have I written there? I can't read my own writing. Mr. someone. Monseng, I think it is, but I think by then my writing was just getting terrible. But anyway, so they found the body, and this actor Bruce Jones, he went on to be Les Battersby in Coronation Street. Anyway, the first thought was it was a disinterred body from the cemetery, because it's right next to Southern Cemetery, which is a huge, I say we lived right opposite Southern Cemetery on the Balmoral Road, and these allotments were just round the corner, and of course it was a cemetery. So the first thought when the police first arrived, because of the state of the body, they thought it'd been a corpse that had been dug up. They didn't realise it was actually, a poor soul that had, been murdered. Anyway, they found the £5. It was in her handbag, and although Peter had checked in her handbag, he hadn't checked the pocket down the side. Like as women, we'd know, wouldn't we, that there's always a pocket in the side where you took your notes or whatever. I've got a chihuahua going mad outside, so my dogs will probably start barking now. Anyway, so they found the £5 note, but unfortunately too much time had passed to specify its origin. But he was interviewed, because he was interviewed again, because he was one of the possibilities of where this £5 note might have come from. But he'd been to the housewarming party, so that was his alibi. He'd had the housewarming party and dropped his parents off at home, but they obviously mustn't have checked it too much, because, they mustn't have checked the timelines. Well, timelines are just a joke, as we know, aren't we? But anyway, that was his alibi, that he'd been to the housewarming party, dropped his parents off at home. So he was dismissed as a suspect. No, so told you. So going back to Sonia, because a lot of people think, did Sonia know? Now, I wouldn't like to think that she knew. I mean, she had been diagnosed for schizophrenia, because he claimed that he had schizophrenia when he was arrested, but it was proven that he didn't at the time, although later he was put into Broadmoor. But at the time, he was proven to be sane. But he probably got his ideas about schizophrenia from Sonia, because she had been on treatment for schizophrenia for 2 years before their marriage. Then after after it all came out, etc., she stuck by him for a long, long time. She stuck by him. And there was a journalist, Barbara Jones, who interviewed Sonia many times. And she said that Sonia is, this is exactly how she described her, the most irritating, strangest and coldest person I have ever met. She's incredibly prickly and demanding. Now, a lot of people say that Sonia was very domineering towards Peter. I don't think she perhaps knew what he was doing, but the only thing that made me think, and any of you, any women out there, you'll know, and men, but if you're doing the washing, and if you're finding, like, he had all these weird outfits that he would take, he would cut the pockets out of his trousers so he could put his hands in and do whatever he wanted to do, did she not see those clothes? You do see, don't you, what clothes your partner has got, or did he have a hiding place for them? We have to give her the benefit of the doubt, surely. If she would have, or what would you do if you found that? I mean, I'm just thinking, what would you do if you, hidden away somewhere, you found a pair of trousers that had the pockets cut out, or the V-necked jumper that he wore, so that he had easy access and things, and how would you find that. I don't know. Or maybe she was just very detached and she just didn't. There's lots of people live together and don't even know what each other are doing most of the time. I know that. I've met people like that. They're couples, but you think, oh my God, do you ever actually do anything together? Some people, that's how they live. Everybody's different, aren't they? So anyway, eventually she did divorce. She didn't divorce Peter till 1994. And then 3 years later, she married a hairdresser called Michael Woodward. And I hope she was happy. But anyway, I don't know. She's still alive. She's 72, but she's still on this earth, even though Peter's gone. Yeah. So that's more or less it for the story of Peter Sutcliffe. A very grim sort of, what's the word? A grim period in British history, isn't it, to sort of think that we had a guy like that sort of walking our streets, and at least he's not walking our streets any longer, but it's quite scary, isn't it, if you've got daughters or sisters or mums or aunts or I'm just looking at, but for Stephen Port, the guy who I've decided that, 'cause it's about time. Oh gosh, no, I should do a woman. There's not been many female serial killers. There has been a couple, but has there been a bit? Oh yeah, there was that. Anyway, I'll think about it, but I think I will do Stephen Port next time, because I've set my mind off thinking about him now, and it'll sort of rattle through my head. But yeah, and he didn't, Rachel, you're right, he didn't say really why he did it, except in the beginning he said God had told him to do it to rid the world of prostitutes. But I think that's more or less been completely debunked, that wasn't why he did it. I just think sometimes these serial killers, we try and work out why they do things, but there is there's no reason that we'll ever understand, because they're just not wired correctly. I don't understand this. So he killed all those women, but then he would go home. He seemed to love his wife. He loved his mum, so how could you do that? But yes, maybe not in Lancashire, David. Maybe policing has improved. Jennifer, Robert Black. I will do Robert. I don't like doing children's cases really, because I find them very upsetting. But the one thing I do like, but I find the way he was caught shows what's the word? There's always like the way he was caught by a citizen. I do like to report on those things, because I think it is the public who catches these people in the end a lot of the time. I mean, in Peter Sutcliffe's case, in the end, it was a policeman who, just was acting on his instinct that there was something strange, because they could have let him go that night, just because he had the wrong number plates on or whatever. There's probably loads of times they think there's so many other things going on. I mean, I knew a few policemen when I lived in Manchester. They were stressed. I mean, Manchester, I think this is something to remember as well. There's a lot of crime, and there's a lot of drug related, and it's quite a depressing job. It really is. You deal with a lot of things being a policeman. So I've always got a lot of sympathy for the police. But yeah, Jennifer, he did. The father, that was. But yeah, I will do that story, because I think the way he was caught is good. But I'm not talking so much about the father, because the father was a policeman, of course, about the member of public that spotted him and rang the police. How, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because sometimes you see things and you think, oh, did I see that? And he could have easily just walked on, but he actually rang the police and he saved that little girl's life, didn't he? Because otherwise that would have been the end of it for her. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the comments now. But anyway, so I'm going to go shortly. I hope you found that interesting. Maybe there were things you didn't know before about Peter Sutcliffe. I think most people have heard of him. please like on your way out if you haven't already. So tomorrow I'm going on location, and I might actually, because the members already know where I'm going, and maybe later on tonight I'll release the information to everyone, so you'll know where I'm going. If you've got any questions about the place, I'm looking forward to it, seeing it for myself, and sort of combining it hopefully with the holiday as well. But anyway, I hope you all have a fantastic evening, and as I say, just thank you so much. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate that you turn up for these live streams, you watch my videos. It just makes it all worthwhile. And you know, I enjoy talking about true crime, which it's awful, really, isn't it? Sometimes I think, oh God, but you know, it's important. It is important that we remember these things and remember the victims. It's important that we try and learn from it. I think the police have improved because of cases like this, learning all the time, aren't we? And DNA has just been the most fantastic thing. One day I'd like to do, you know, some videos on cases, cold cases that have been solved by DNA. You know, that like the Golden Gate serial killer. He got away. He must have thought he was never going to get caught, and then suddenly he was with DNA. So I love that, you know, people that think they've got away with it, finding out that they haven't got away with it. So, oh, thank you, Jennifer. Yes, I will let you all know how. Well, you'll be hearing from me. I'm not sure exactly how many videos I can do when I'm there, but I'm going to try my best to do some lives, etc. If not, I'll just take lots of footage, etc. And when I come back, I'll just be able to put some videos together. And if there's any developments in anything that's, you know, we've been interested in and talking about, I will find a way. I will find a way of going live somehow and reporting on it. Oh, are you going to work? Oh, you're taking my book with you, Joe. Oh, that's nice. Oh, I hope you like it. Where are you going? Anyway, never mind. Sorry. Yeah. Hi, Desi. I hope I've said hello to everyone. I'm sorry if I missed anyone, because when I get into my stride and that, I can't always look at the chat because I get too distracted, as you probably realise. So, okay, night all. Thank you so much. Remember to always live and love very carefully. And until I see you again, may your gods go with you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.